Okay, I know and understand that you want to get playing. I promised you little blah blah, and practically all I've been doing up to this point is talking. You have to bear with me though. Remember that we're still in the early days of this course, and remember that you're not only learning to play jazz, you're also becoming a much better musician overall. So with this short lesson, we have to dispel a couple more myths, and then look at another very, very important skill that you have either to acquire or to refine. First of all, as I said in the beginning, contrary to what most people believe, there's a lot of ground you can cover as a beginner jazz musician without having to know how to read music in the standard notation. And when I say a lot, I truly mean a lot. In fact, you can go quite far, and if you want, after this course, you can tackle the advanced techniques of bebop improvisation, still without having to know how to read music. As guitar players, we have two very handy substitutes for standard music notation. One of them is visual, and it consists either of the tablature format you were all familiar with, or the chord charts. What you're seeing here is a page from the famous Real Book, the true Bible of jazz players. Here you see standard notation for the theme, but what you really are looking for are the chord symbols below every measure. We will learn how to interpret them and especially how to use them to improvise. The other substitute for music notation is your ears. Tablature and chord charts will tell you where to place your fingers, but music itself will tell you how to play those notes in time. I'm sure though that as an experienced blues or rock guitar player, you know these things already. What I'm saying here is that tablature, chord charts and your capacity to listen and reproduce are all you need to get to know jazz. Now, you will remember that in the last lesson I told you that you absolutely have to learn and master the technique of alternate picking. I state that if you're not already at ease with that, you should devote probably 10 minutes a day to developing that particular skill. And there's another skill that you must have. That is, know your fretboard. Am I saying here that you have to be able to instantly tell every single note all across the fretboard? No, thankfully I'm not saying that. What you have to know absolutely and necessarily are your two bottom strings. And why is that? First, as you already know, the vast majority of the chords we play have their root, that is the note that gives the name to the chord, either on the low E or on the A string. So when the chord charts read, for instance, F sharp minor 7, your fingers have to go automatically either to this position on the E string or to this position on the A string. That must happen without having to count 2nd fret or 9th fret. No, you have to have a mental map of your bottom two strings and go there automatically. Second, once you know by heart your bottom two strings, you also know your D and G strings. And how is that? You do that by simply looking for octaves. There's a fixed geometrical relationship between the position of the notes on the four bottom strings. So let's make a few examples. Let's take the G note here, and you have a G note here. There's a geometric relationship between these two notes. There's an empty fret in between, so you know by heart your G note here, and you know your octave automatically by spacing your fingers like that. Let's take an E note here, and automatically you know your octave, and it's exactly the same relationship between a note on the A string and a note on the G string. So, know by heart your two bottom strings, and you know the D and G strings as well. And the same thing goes for the B and E string, because the relationship is slightly different. You have two empty frets in between. If you take a G note here, you have a G note, your octave is here. And the same goes for a D note here. How do I know this is a D? Because it's the octave. I know my D here, I know my D here, and from my D here I get to a D here. That is what I called fretboard geometry. Know your two bottom strings and you will know the notes on all across the board. I insist, however, that especially at the beginning, the four top strings are much less important. What you really have to dedicate some effort to is the instinctive knowledge of the bottom two strings. So there you go. That's your second 10 minutes of daily practice. I would say probably for a couple of weeks. Start with an open bottom E and come up one fret that's a semitone at the time and name the notes you're playing. E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A flat, whatever, and you keep going up to the 15th fret, because above that you probably don't need to know much more. And then start from the 15th fret and descend one half step at a time and keep naming the notes. Then do the same thing for the A string. A, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D flat, whatever you want to say, and keep going up to the 15th fret and then descend. And then pick a note at random and name it. B flat, D flat, F. If you do this 10 minutes a day for a couple of weeks, you will acquire this in what I call the instinctive knowledge of your bottom two strings. And then if you want, by applying what I called fretboard geometry, looking for your octaves, you actually get to know your entire fretboard.